One of the interesting and actually rather ironic things about editing raw images is the fact that the longer you spend editing an image, the longer you sit there and edit just one photo, the harder it can be to actually see it. You're no longer able to see, as the old saying goes, the forest for the trees. And this is something that I have a bad habit of doing. Like I'll just get too wrapped up in a photo, I'll start working on it, I'll start, going deep into making all these adjustments and tweaks to it. And I'll realize after a while that I've lost sight of literally the big picture. Like I'm no longer able to see the image in its entirety because I'm too zoomed in. But what I really need to do, and what would actually benefit the image most, would be for me to just, zoom out a little bit, just to back up a bit and to try and view the image with a fresh set of eyes. And that can be easier said than done, right? Especially when you are the creator of the image, when you are so familiar with the image, when you understand the context of the image, you have all this knowledge about the image that no one else does. And it would be so helpful if you could just view the image from a different perspective. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the tricks that I use to help refresh and rejuvenate my eyesight when I am working on an image. All right, my first tip is perhaps the most obvious one, but this list would not be complete without mentioning it, and that is to simply get away. Get away from the image. Even better, get out of the room in which you do your photo editing and processing work in. Like this room here of mine, I know for a fact when I spend too much time in this room, my eyes become too acclimated to the color temperature of the lights, to the ambient light levels. That moment, I know that like I've had enough. Like I need to break away, I need to get out, I need to go do something else. Even better, like get outside, get out in like sunlight, reset the eyes that way, and then come back and view the image again on screen. And sometimes it's amazing what the difference can be. Sometimes I walk back into the room and look at an image back there and I think, wow, I totally missed that. There's a like a color cast in the image. Like I need to fix the tint on it, or maybe the image is too soft. These are all things that you just don't notice when you're just, so locked onto an image. And it just really helps sometimes just to take a break and just get away from it. All right, my next step to help refresh and rejuvenate your eyes when you are editing your photography is to edit your images in the upside down. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a half-finished landscape image of mine. I say half-finished because it's not raw, but it's not exactly finished either. It's kind of in between the two. But I remember so well when I was editing this image and I reached, a point that was right about here where, I started to look at the photo and I started to think, yeah, maybe I'm done with this. Like maybe this is about as far as I want to go. Then I decided to try the trick of flipping the image upside down and taking a look at it that way. And let's see how that looks. And yeah, pretty big change, right? I mean, now the image looks completely different. I think the reason why the image looks so different now is because when you change that orientation, when you make something upside down, the eye is no longer capable of latching on to, a recognizable subject. It's no longer seeing things in reality. And when it's no longer recognizing shapes and patterns within the frame, it then backs further out and it's trying to kind of, figure out what the image is all about. So you're then viewing the image as a whole. You're then able to see it from corner to corner and edge to edge. Because just look down here at the bottom of the image. This used to be the top, but now it's at the bottom, and you can see just like how much brighter it is down here. There's also more contrast down here at the bottom of the frame compared to the top, which is noticeably dimmer and darker. And the balance of it just feels completely off to me. So I went ahead and made some edits to this, and let me show you the change. And again, it's perfectly fine to edit an image in this upside down state, whether you're using Photoshop or Lightroom. When you rotate that image back vertically, the software will automatically rotate any layers or masks or adjustments or whatever it is that you've done. And this goes for both Photoshop and Lightroom. It'll just flip them back right side up again. So you can do a bunch of work in the upside down and then flip everything over. So let me just show you, this is the change that I made here. But what I tried to do here was solve some of those brightness issues by darkening this area down here. I then tried to inject some light up here, into, these rocks here, and definitely down here in these as well, in order to create better balance and harmony between the bottom of the frame and between the top of the frame, and just forget for a while about what it is that I'm looking at. Just forget about reality, forget about, the subject itself, and just focus on that balance and that rhythm and that flow that I'm looking for. Okay, my next tip is to edit your color images using black and white. And no, I'm not talking about converting color images to black and white, but rather temporarily changing your image to black and white. Just taking the color information out of the image and then making tonal adjustments to it, adjusting your exposure, your contrast, your highlights, your shadows, your whites, and your blacks, making all of those adjustments before you start working on color. And the best way to do that when using Adobe Lightroom is to come up here to the top of the Develop panel and change this from a color treatment to black and white. Now in black and white, I'm able to see the tonal values more clearly in the image. I'm able to assess, how bright one region is compared to another, whether I need to be changing my shadows or my blacks or, whatever other adjustments there are that I want to make without color getting in the way, without color affecting my judgment. Because as you may remember, when it comes to digital photography, when a pixel gets darker, if there is color information in that pixel, that color will become more saturated. And then when a pixel gets brighter, the reverse happens. The color then becomes less saturated. So what can end up happening then is that, let's say you're editing a color image like this one and you pull the exposure down and you start, making, some other adjustments here too, to your black point, your white point, whatever it is that you're doing. Say like you have a blue sky or something like that, and you're making those adjustments, all of a sudden the sky may start to get really blue and you may get a little anxious about it. And you may start to think, oh, I don't know if I really want to be making this change. This is a bad idea because the sky looks bad. I don't like the color. Turn on black and white, go in and make your edits. And then when you're happy with the image, go back and re-enable color and then tackle the color question. And actually, while we're here, let me show you really quick how to do this in Photoshop as well. A good way to do it there. What I would recommend doing is coming down here to the adjustment layer icon and then adding a black and white adjustment layer on top. And then you can just keep this black and white layer at the top of your at the top of the layers panel. And then any additional layers or adjustments that you make, just keep them below black and white. And then when you're done with it, just delete the layer. All right, my next tip is to view your image using a different display. Doesn't matter what kind of screen it is. It could be the screen in your laptop. It could be your phone. It could be your tablet. It could be your television. I mean, it really doesn't matter. The point here is that it's really helpful, I think, to view an image in a different context. Like, stop looking at the image on your main editing display and look at it someplace else. For example, like, here's that image from earlier on my phone. Here's the same image here on my iPad Air. There is something weird that happens, especially on a phone, when you look at it in a small, almost like thumbnail size. Then it's really easy a lot of times to spot, kind of like what we were doing a minute ago in the upside down, to see problems with balance and tonal balance and the rhythm of the image and whether it feels heavy in one place or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can see when you get the image a little bit smaller. And a phone is really helpful for that. Plus, I don't know, there's just something for me about, just holding an image in my hand and especially looking at it in a different room, in a different place, in a different lighting environment, using the default settings of the screen, where like the tablet or phone is automatically adjusting the brightness for you in order to get like a good sense of what the end viewer is going to see, like what this image is going to look like to the outside world. And just forget for a while that I'm the one who created it. Like, just kind of forget about the fact that I'm the one who's responsible for making these edits and making these changes, and just try to see it from, standing in someone else's shoes and using someone else's eyes, and just try to put yourself into that mindset. And it's really easy to do, by the way, especially if you're, kind of like bought into the whole Apple ecosystem thing, because you can just airdrop stuff. Just create a JPEG and airdrop it to all your different devices. Another option is to use a service like Dropbox. Like if you have Dropbox on everything, then you can just drop that JPEG into Dropbox and it'll sync everywhere. And then you can pull up the image that way. Okay, I have a few more tips to share with you, but before we go any further, I just want to take a moment, take a break, and encourage you to subscribe to this channel. If you have not already subscribed to my channel and you're into photography, you're into this kind of thing, you're into product reviews and tutorials and this whole weird world, I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel. All you have to do is tap or, click on that red button just right down there. That's all you have to do to subscribe to this channel and keep in touch with me and be notified of new videos when they come out. All right, my next tip is to use presets in order to pre-visualize an image and to establish a creative direction with it. Now, obviously presets are a Lightroom thing, but there are equivalents elsewhere, like in Capture One, they're called styles, and I'm sure other photo editing applications have similar things as well. The point being is that sometimes when you start editing an image, I know sometimes I feel this way where like I'm not exactly sure where I want to go with it. Like, do I want it to be darker? Do I want it to be brighter? Should I, pull the saturation out of it? Should I put more saturation into it? And I'm not really sure what the potential is in the image. Like I'm no longer able to see what's there. And maybe I can use something else like presets in order to show me. There are a lot of options in here that you can use, and these are all just built into the application. And what I typically do with an image, and I'm not exactly sure like what style I want, where it is I want to go creatively with it, I'll just come over here and just start opening up these preset panels in here and just start walking through each available preset. So like this one here, rather interesting. So this one here is obviously injecting a little bit of warmth, a little bit of yellow and red into the highlights of the image. Now my goal here is not to select a preset and then use that preset as a baseline for my color grade. Though obviously I could do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's, entirely reasonable. But rather what I'm simply trying to do here is just get a look at what's possible, just to push and pull the image. It's kind of like if you've ever like played a video game and you're tasked with, styling your avatar. The first button I hit every time is random. Like I'm just sitting there, just clicking random just to see what's out there, just to see what the potential is, what the possibilities are. And then when I get a sense of, what I can do with it, then I go in and do my own thing. Okay, my next tip is to use the crop tool. Now, I'm not talking about using crop to like, crop out an unwanted subject or area of an image, or, using crop to change the aspect ratio to fit a particular dimension, but rather I'm talking about using crop as a creative tool, as a compositional tool, a tool that you can use in order to find a better image, an image within the image that you created. For example, this image here, this is, like a 3x2 captured vertically, and it's okay, but there's obviously, I feel like there's a lot of kind of redundant space down here at the bottom. And, by including that space down there, I feel like it's drawing attention away from my subject that's here in the center. So to fix this and to, just kind of give it a better rhythm and flow, I can just change the aspect ratio. So I can just come up here, use the crop tool, maybe make it a 4x5 in order to pull some of that energy out of the bottom of the image. Another thing I can do is change it to a square aspect ratio and see if that works, see if that helps. It's kind of amazing sometimes what a square 1-to-1 aspect ratio can do to an image. Like if you ever have an image and you feel like it's just like there's a lot of energy in it and you feel it like there's a lot going on, it feels rather busy, try using a 1-to-1 aspect ratio, because there's something about the equal dimensions of the square that inject like a sense of calm into the image, because there's no friction being caused by stretching one side in any particular direction. Everything is in equal harmony and balance within the frame when you have a square aspect ratio, or at least it implies that. So anyway, I just love using the crop tool this way because it's such an interesting tool to gain like a totally different perspective on an image. Sometimes you're able to find a fantastic image within an image that you just simply couldn't see because there was just too many other things in the frame distracting you. So definitely play around with it. All right, my next tip to help you refresh and rejuvenate your eyes and just give you a different perspective on the image that you are currently editing is to apply an auto adjustment layer in Photoshop. And this is one of my favorite techniques. I use this all the time in order to, like, especially as a finishing step. Like when I get to the end of an image, I think it's, finished and ready to go. I do this as like a final gut check just to see what it is that Photoshop sees, just to see what it is that it believes could be better and what could be improved. And then I can decide whether to keep it or change it or whatever. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so for the sake of time, here's the same image we were just looking at in Adobe Lightroom. And what we want to do is come up here to the adjustment panel, then click on curves, and it'll throw a curves adjustment layer on top of our image. Now, nothing by default has happened here because the curve is just a linear curve, but this is the magical part. What you want to do if you are on a Mac like I am, you want to hold down the Option key. If you're on Windows, I think this is Alt. Not entirely sure, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Anyway, you hold down the key and then you come up here to the Properties panel for the Curves Adjustment layer and you click on Auto. And when you have that key on your keyboard held down, you get this really interesting modal window here. Photoshop is automatically adjusting the brightness and the contrast and the colors in the image to what it sees as being correct. It's essentially doing some of the same things that the image drop down up here does with auto color, auto contrast, and I think there's something else in there too. But this is kind of like a one-stop place in order to be doing all of that. And each one of these algorithms in this modal here will give you a different auto adjustment result. So let's just click through each one and take a look at the change. So this one here is just a basic enhanced brightness and contrast adjustment. And then we have find dark and light colors, which is rather interesting. You can see how much it's, pushed the saturation in the shot. And then when you select that, you actually then have this additional option here of snap neutral midtones. And when you enable that, that's almost like a white balance adjustment. Like if you're ever trying to figure out how to like color correct an image and you want to do it quickly, you can just throw one of these curves adjustment layers on top and then use that snap neutral midtones in order to pull any color cast out of the image. Let me just turn that back off, and then we can come up here to enhance per channel contrast, another way of applying contrast across the red and the green and the blue channels instead of, like the combined composite channel. And then we have one more up here at the top for enhance monochromatic contrast. This one up here at the top is my most favorite because enhanced monochromatic contrast does exactly what it sounds like. It enhances the contrast in the image without affecting color. So it's not going to make the colors more saturated or less saturated. It's not going to be, making any changes there. It's simply going to apply like a luminance adjustment to the image in order to give it like a stronger black point and a white point if the image needs it. So what I oftentimes do is just throw this on top with enhanced monochromatic contrast applied. And so, yeah, I can either, keep that, or one of the really interesting things you can do is just take that layer and drop the opacity. Like, let's say that, okay, like I'm with you, Photoshop, but I think that change is a little too strong. Well, I can just, dial in however much or however little of that change I want. And for me, this is such a useful tool to use, especially when I'm at the end of an edit. I can just pop an image open here in Photoshop, throw an adjustment layer on top, and use that auto adjustment just to see what the possibilities are, just to get a different perspective on it. So at the end of the day, I hope at least one of the tricks that I share with you in this video proves helpful. Hopefully I gave you something new to think about, a new technique, a new way of viewing your images while you're editing them. And by the way, if you have your own way of doing something similar, if there's a particular trick, a particular thing that you do in order to refresh and rejuvenate your eyesight and help you see your images from a different perspective, and I did not cover it in this video, please share. Please let me know down below in the comments. Let me know, let other people know, because I bet other people would benefit from your knowledge as well. Again, if you would like to keep tabs with me in the future and see additional videos, feel free to subscribe to my channel down below, and you can also sign up for my email newsletter over at my website. The URL is down below in the video description. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I will see you next time.